and and then playing an incredible show and ultimately feeling great about it, but feeling like I wish that I hadn't been in bed for 4 of my 5 days. And what was your experience of Dark Mofo like, Connor?
I saw it through Instagram. I was not there. So, yeah, we had to. It's the one Conjurer show I've missed since joining because, yeah, they very kindly say put the bands up and stuff for like 4 or 5 days, but I couldn't get the full time off of work,
Oh
so it would have
man.
literally been fly out 24 hours or whatever to by the time to get to Tasmania, play like land day of play a 45-minute set, whatever, and then had to immediately fly back for another 24 hours to get back for work. And initially, I'd booked the time off and was going to do it. And the closer it got, I was like, I just can't justify doing this. I'll die. So yeah, we got Jaya. Hey, whoa! We got Jaya from Make Them Suffer to fill in,
Yeah.
and he smashed it. But yeah, so my experience was just getting lots of Instagram notifications of such and such mentioned you in a story, and then watching them all and being like, "This looks fucking sick. This bullshit."
We walked off stage and we were like, that was probably the best show we've ever played, and we can't tell Connor.
Oh, no.
But we've surpassed it now with Arctangent the other year, but only just like it was
Yeah,
tight. And I think also the relief of turning up, the only practice we'd had with Jaya was in the hotel room acoustically and just not knowing what it was going to be like and it just being amazing. Um, Definitely added to it. But yeah, it was not nice playing without Connor, to be honest, as
Oh,
much as it was a good time.
oh.
that's nice. Keep that bit in.
I've never been this kind to him in person.
As soon as the screen goes off, it's like, all right, mate. Yeah, how mate. You're very honest. I will like that in my band. It's like, oh fuck it. And then it's how you talk. Uh, but it is hard. It's a hard gig trying to be a musician and you're trying to balance like reality because no one's flying around in private jets unless they're, the hip hop people. It's tough, and you got to save that leave. So I've been in that position before, man. So I definitely know what it's like, you know.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's very much the life we've chosen, and like I say, it's just trying to figure it out. But it's also, putting we were never going to cancel the show and the opportunity just because one of us couldn't make it. It's just one of those things. You just kind of have to accept that it's for the good of the band, essentially, for me to not be there in that particular instance. And yeah, it looks like hopefully it paid off because, like you said, we're coming back now for a bit more of a full tour. And yeah, I can actually come along this time, and that should be great.
So many people are keen. It's going to be such a good show. And you're playing with BOTCH, like 2 shows with BOTCH as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Man,
fell right into that one. That was great.
how'd that come about? That's so sick.
So we had the tour booked, and Greg from United Front hit us up and was really keen and sorted it all out, and we were locked in. And then he comes back an email and is like, "Ah, bit of a spanner in the works. Two of the shows clash with botch dates. Would you be open to supporting them?" I was like, "Yeah, I reckon we could make that work, boss."
Nah.
Yeah, yeah.
Poor us.
Nah, we'll play it. We'll play a headline show in a 50 cap venue against Botch for 2 nights. Sounds great. Like,
Man, that's
yeah,
cool. Were they a big influence on you guys?
not at all.
Not necessarily. Some of that sort of my understanding of that scene, so like more Converge and all that sort of stuff, bands from around a similar time
Yeah.
creep in a little bit, but Botch specifically, not really.
We were like a bit young for. So our original bassist Andy, who had a few years on me, he was a huge Botch fan, and for me and Dan especially, like coming into it, it was the bands that Botch influenced. So like the Converge, your Dillinger Escape Plan, that kind of era of bands was way more what we not so much grew up on, but got into around the time of starting the band. So obviously they're one of those bands I recognize the importance of, and you hear all the stories about the amount of people that they influenced and how kind
Mm.
of integral they were to the genre, but they weren't that band for us specifically. So it kind of feels even more cheeky that we get to be the band doing the show, you know?
Never know. You never know what happens after that, you know? You might become
Exactly.
good pals and
Well,
there we go.
one of the guys is in Sumac that are a huge influence on the band and one of Dan's favorite bands, and recently becoming one of mine. And Russian Circles we played festivals with and stuff like that. So there's there's a lot of crossover in what BOTCH are doing now. So, but I mean, yeah, just to have the opportunity to play with any band of that caliber is just something we don't take for granted.
And Low, you're doing a run with Low, who are, in my opinion, one of the best bands we have in this country. They are fucking unreal. Do you know much about those guys? Are you friends with those guys?
Don't know them personally, but a big fan. Like them for a long time. I remember specifically me and Dan talking about them because I think they played Damnation Festival years ago in the UK, and I think we missed them, but we've been listening to the record with the propeller on it. Can't remember the name of it, but yeah, we've been listening to that a bunch. And when we got the tour poster through with them on it, Dan was like, I was literally listening to them this morning for the first time in a while. So yeah, again, another band that I think if we could have, we had a lot of say about the opening bands on the headline shows, but the tour support was just booked and we found out about it. They'd have been top of the list to come do the shows with us. So that was incredible work from Greg there.
Yeah, Greg's a good dude. Shout out, Greg. But man, it's gonna be a really good tour. I know heaps of people that are pumped when as soon as you guys were announced, they were like, "Holy shit!" So that's a good sign.
Sick. Well, that's good. That's reassuring. It's a long way to come to play to no one, so that's really great. Thank you.
Well done those shows though. But,
yeah, very true.
It's not going to be one of them. It's going to be a good one for you guys. That's for sure. You know.
Sick.
Yeah, absolutely. And your latest album, Pathos, came out in 2022. Such a great record as well. Have you been finding that people are connecting with it? You know, the further you go along with the album cycle, now it's like what, 2 years?
I definitely think more and more. I said to the label specifically when we wrote it, I was like, my prediction is this album is going to have a generally positive reception, 'cause I think it's good, but it's going to be a bit more muted. And then over time, I think it's one of those records that takes quite a while to bed in with you because it's just super dense. And after about 6 months, I started getting texts from friends and bands going, "Oh, the album finally clicked with me. Like, I really get it." And Kate from Pupil Slicer, who I'm driving, listened to it in the van on the drive to Manchester yesterday and was like, I gave it one listen on when it came out, and I thought it was all right. And then like she'd pause it every few minutes and be like, "Yo, what the fuck?" I'm like, "Yeah." They were like, "Yeah, I just needed some time." And I think that's the gift and the curse with the kind of direction the band has moved in kind of since we started. Like even the demos before the EP were way more immediate than the stuff that ended up on it, is that while the music will bounce off a lot of people on first listen, if you give it the time and the attention and stick with it, I think there's a lot more to be got out of it than something like Maya that was, I think, a brilliant record, but way more immediate. I think with a bit less staying power longer term. And for me, those are the records that really stick with me. Stuff that on first listen, I enjoy, but something about it makes me put it back on, and you give it that time and you just get more out of it with every listen. And I mean, I hope that's the experience that people have had with the record, if not just loving it immediately and never stopping playing it. I'd take that.
Have you had the same kind of feedback, Connor?
Yeah, pretty much. I think Brady summed it up really well. I think, yeah, definitely compared to Maya as well, it was, at least from, because I joined the band after Maya had been recorded, so kind of got to still experience it as a fan anyway, even though we were touring it and taking it all over the place. kind of like Brady said, is that I think Maya's a great album to put on and say be grabbed by and enjoy. And still, like, we still get loads of people today. What, that's like probably coming up to 6 years. Maybe it has passed 6. Not important. 6 years or so old, and we still get people telling us how much they love it, which is great. But then, yeah, I think the comparison with Pathos, like Brady was saying, and like people in general who talk to us about it and are generally positive about it, is when you come back to it, you get a little bit more each time. So whereas with Mara, it's like, I love this, and when I put it on, I still love it. With Pathos, it's been a little more, like Brady said, there's intrigue and sort of more layers to it. So it's, when I put it on, I found something else and I love it even more than I did on the last listen. And that sort of thing to say, what takes a little more time to kind of grow and maybe in some people's eyes get it up to that same level of love that they maybe had for any sort of album where it was like, yep, I love this straight away. But yeah, that hopefully it's much more, I guess, fulfilling for us as musicians who wrote it to know that obviously people are spending that much time with it and putting that much effort into it. And so hopefully then the listener is kind of getting that same stuff as well. But yeah, in terms of the feedback, my experience has been very much kind of what Brady said as well. It's like, yeah, people were very nice when it came out as well, but that is kind of like, yeah, continue to grow and develop over time, which has been pretty cool.
That excitement, like they come back, they swing back around. And they go, no, I fucking love. They go, man. First, they go, man, it's a sick album. And you go, oh, thanks, man. And then they turn around, and they go, no, man, you don't fucking understand. You know, it's like gets under their skin, and they're like keeps them awake at night. But of course, musically, you know, you guys are very dark and heavy. But off stage, you guys seem like you're actually quite chilled out dudes. You know, I understand where it comes from, but I want to know if you can explain it for you. Where does that come from? That duality of the on-stage persona to where and the music to where you are, you know, sitting here, hanging out, having a chat.
Do you want to go first, Connor?
I can go first. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the music and the darkness and all that sort of stuff, it's what we're all interested in musically anyway, which is obviously why we're drawn to this and why we're in a band doing it. But specifically, a lot of it comes from Dan, who's the other vocalist and guitarist there behind a lot of the riffs and a lot of the like initial lyrical concepts and stuff that we'll then try and jump in on and say have our impact on. But mainly it's kind of all from Dan. And they've definitely had their own experiences with a lot of the stuff that ends up then making its way onto the albums, talking about things like mental health and all that sort of stuff. But then in terms of like how it's then presented on stage and stuff like that, I don't know, you know, what if it's like this for every member or every member of any band, right? But for me, it's all just part of the performance aspect. So I personally am very fortunate to, you know, not have, I wouldn't think, too many kind of overriding demons or anything like that. I'm not in a position where, you know, when I go on stage, that's where I can let all this stuff out that I can't day to day. It's like, I don't want to go as far as to call it acting, but it's definitely more that sort of thing. It is as if I'm, you know, in a play or performing a piece where it's like, yeah, I feel like these songs, the way I want to put them across to a live audience is in this intense, kind of just, I don't know, kind of, yeah, emotional and just oppressive live performance. Because I think that matches the music in a lot of senses. And then, yeah, like you say, then as soon as we step off the stage and the performance is quote unquote done, it's like, I'm just a guy. I'm just a little guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think,
yeah, it's like, it's not necessarily quite as black and white as that. I'm not backstage being like getting into character or anything like that. It's more just, it's definitely not a thing for me, at least, of being like, oh yeah, this band and this live performance is how I get my stuff out. You know what I mean? It's just I do it from a love of doing it, and the performance style just comes from, you know, what I enjoy doing and what the music I feel like kind of calls for.
I think that me and Dan are probably more, I'm assuming with Dan, but they're pretty sad. So I think that they a similar situation, but like for me, it's like that is the chance to like to really lean into the not only just like the negativity, but the stuff that like really fucking pisses me off on a
Mm,
daily basis that I don't really have an outlet for. So I'm not really big on mouthing off online about stuff. And especially kind of with this new record, a lot of the lyrics that I'm really interested in are just a way to just tell people to fuck off. Like just the amount of like just intolerant fucking hate and negativity that people put out into the world and towards themselves that I just have no time for.
mm,
For me, like the band has always been a bit of a channel to like let loose some of that rage that I normally just doom scroll on Twitter and just find a post of someone saying something super reasonable and just scroll through all of the bile that gets, directed at people. And that like frustration and like there's nothing I can do like to change the perspectives of people all across the world. All that we really have as a voice as a band is just to put out our perspective on things. It's not something I think we've ever really done that much.
mm.
And I personally, we haven't nailed down any lyrics for the new album yet, but that's something that I really want to get across is that like there are some beliefs and some truths that we really hold core as a unit that it's not always part of the conversation, but I think we're all on the same page with a lot of that stuff. So the live performance has been and I think will be an outlet for me to just burn off some of that excess rage. Um but like Connor said, like the bands that we love, live have that intensity and have that really oppressive nature to their performances. And it's something that we've always wanted from day one to go really hard. And I think that was something that has been, whatever people think of the music, the live show has always been something that has really carried us forwards and is something that we put a lot of time into. Even when we were gigging, 3 times a week in the early days, we'd still go in and rehearse every week when we had 5 songs and we'd just like hammer them out. And that kind of commitment to being better is something that we have all really stuck with and really want to continue to push. Um, but yeah, it's always I was actually talking about this again the other day with Pathos about how while some of the songs aren't as sonically brutal as some of the stuff on Maya, I think emotionally these songs hit a lot harder, and that's something that has been really interesting with some of our set lists have been more geared towards an emotional weight than a sonic weight. And I find that really cathartic just to kind of like it was never an emotional thing for years. It was always let's go out and be really fucking heavy and oh this breakdown's gonna, knock their socks off, etc.
Yeah.
But now it kind of feels like oh that this is gonna make people feel sad. And I quite like that.
No, but it's that connecting with people and finding something that helps people through their day or relates. It's super important, man. But
We've had that that people have been going through really shit times or, specifically
mm,
bad situations and that they've really connected with the music. And it's like, well, if this kind of music, you're certainly not doing it for profit, you're doing it for connection with people. And we're lucky enough that people have been connecting with the songs, and it's just really cool.
absolutely, absolutely. And Connor, I know you mentioned before you've been with the band just for a few years, but I believe this year marks 10 years officially, right? Of Conjurer, is that right?
Probably 10 years
Ish.
we started like since Dan and I like got together and started hanging out and riffing and eating
Mm.
takeout. and I think our first show was 2015, February.
Okay.
1st of February 2015. So we're skirting around 10 years. It's very bizarre to say it out loud
Yeah.
because it does not feel like that. And then it also, thinking back, someone would be like, I'll mention a venue, and I'm like, oh God, we played there to like 4 people in 2015 or whatever. Like it's yeah, it's bizarre, but it still feels like fresh and exciting.
That's what you want, man. And you know, you guys are just picking up globally now. Like, are you noticing that it's over the last couple of years, especially? You know, you're building this following. You're playing those massive festivals. I mean, it must be incredible. What's been the most significant moment for each of you on this journey?
It's tricky, especially because I think the way everything typically is now around music and whatnot, and how it's not just music. You're also basically a touring t-shirt company, and social media influencers and all that. It's like, oh, we've not posted on Instagram in a while, and all that sort of stuff, rather than just being blokes wanting to play our guitars and stuff like that. It's always kind of tricky to keep that perspective of where your band is, partly just because it's all encompassing for us. It's pretty much all wherever, like, thinking about and working on one way or another. But also, yeah, it's impossible to really know what the public perception is, especially for us this year being quote unquote quieter,
Mm,
um, whilst we're trying to focus on writing the next album. So we're not touring as much and stuff like that. So it feels like there's a little bit less going on at the moment, but then probably, that might not be the case at all. And it might be like, say, loads of people now over in Australia are just discovering us and hopefully going to come to the show, and things might be picking up on that side of the world. Um, so yeah, it's a really tricky one to kind of figure out where to place yourself in things. But like you were kind of saying in the question, it's like every now and again markers do come along.
yeah.
And so it's often things like, I don't know, venues that you managed to play where you might have been and seen like loads of bands growing up or stuff like that, or playing with bands that have inspired us. So the most recent one is probably we managed to do a few shows with Gajira,
Yeah.
um, which is like they're one of the main reasons this band started. Like, even obviously before I joined, I just know that that's kind of one of the main bands Dan and Brady were inspired by when they first sat down. So it's like that's a huge like thing, and like an almost a full circle kind of moment. That yeah, it's like coming up to 10 years. It's like, okay, 10 years since this band was an idea. Where are we 10 years later? Oh, we were main support to the band that made us want to do it in the first place.
Hmm.
It's like, so yeah, to try and summarize that ramble, it's like in general of like, where like are things picking up, where are we in the scene and across the world and whatnot, it's kind of hard to say, but it definitely does feel like we're hopefully still on the right path for what we want to achieve with this band. And then yeah, we're fortunate enough to still be in a position where we are kind of ticking off those bucket list boxes, and there's a few more to go, and I'm sure those are all different per member as well as like kind of agreed upon ones as the band. But yeah, so far so good, I would say.
I I completely agree with all of that. I do think that for me, when we did the first US tour and
Mm.
it was like a roaring success, like kind of completely unexpected. We had zero expectation. We've played, in countries in Europe for the first time, and it's been fine. Um, and Europe is notoriously like a really hard territory to break into for British bands. So like
Mm.
it's something we're really focused on, keep going out and keep playing and really trying to do the work out there. The US was instantly like, what the fuck? It was insane, and it felt like it really blew open the doors and like my perception as well. I was like, oh, there are people the other side of the world that like have been waiting to see us for years, and like people would come to the shows. Spit one guy drove 6 hours, brought us a six-pack of beer and a bag of weed, and was like,
Hey.
I'm driving 6 hours home, then going to work in the morning, but I had to come and see you guys play. Like that kind of shit for 4 people from such a small area of the Midlands in the UK that is not known for music, and doesn't really had a bit of a scene when we were growing up, but like
Mm.
really anything for the last few years, or we've never played our hometown. Um, like that was just such an eye opener. And then in kind of the sense of us having, where are we as a band, I think is such an interesting question, because it was something that I was really keen on tracking. And I'd look at Spotify gives you a chance to compare your streams over the last few months with other bands. So I'd always be putting in bands that we were touring with or bands we'd played with or our friends' bands just to see, how we stacked up. And the thing I've realized over the last 10 years is that it doesn't matter and I don't care. Like going from like really thinking any of that stuff mattered to the only thing I can actually control or have any impact on is this band, and
Mm.
even more specifically, the music that we make, because people are going to either like your band or not. You can have the best social media in the world, you can have the best PR, which we do, you can have a really good label, which we're really lucky to have. Like all of those things are great, but if you don't write good music and make authentic music that you're really passionate about, people will see right through it and won't connect with it. And so for me, the real focus is of the people that connect with our music, are they into it? And how do we get to play shows in front of them? And how do we keep that level of consistency in our output? Because that's how you generate long-term fans. Like
Mm.
the biggest barrier to a band's growth is bands getting jaded and quitting. Like the number one, the thing you got to do is carry on being a band. And
Mm.
it's for me, I don't have any aspirations to headline festivals or to sell X number of tickets. It is to know that when we play shows, the people that are in the room are there because they love it and they want to be there and to have that connection with them. I think if that's your goal and you can execute that, you'll never be disappointed, because like we've played some great shows to 10 people and we've played some really tough shows to
Mm.
hundreds of people. Like it's all of that industry stuff is just smoke and mirrors. Bands get big overnight and disappear the next day, but if you keep putting the work in and you go for slow, consistent growth, that I think that's the only way you can actually be happy doing this, just to stop comparing yourself to other people. And that's something that has been really tough, but
Yeah.
something I've really focused on, especially in the last couple of years. And I'm so much happier and enjoy making music and being in the band. Like since COVID, I think really rejuvenated my excitement for this, because I'm like in the nicest way possible. I don't care. I get to make music that I love with my friends, and that's enough.
That's it. That's what it's about, really, at the heart of it. People get caught up in the whole you know, industry of it all and competitive. Like once you strip it back, that's all it should be, is a bunch of dudes having some beers and having a good time, you know.
I was driving a band from the US recently, and they were like blown away by how supportive bands in the UK are
Mm.
of each other. They were like, we're from this small town where there is a scene, but it's super competitive. Like bands aren't friends. And on this tour, like loads of bands that I'm friends with just came out to hang and say hi and check out the band because I recommended them and they trust my taste
Mm.
on that. They were like, wow, this like feels like a community everywhere we go. And I'm like, it's one of the coolest things about the UK scene is that everyone's rooting for each other for the most part. And it's just I think we're really lucky to be a part of a scene that is on the whole, everyone's on that same level.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Zoom's gonna give me the boot in a minute. I hate how it does that. But I heard you guys talking about this new album that you're working on. I'm pretty excited to hear about that. So, uh, how far along we got it? Have we got a release date, or is it just riffs?
No, yeah, none of that.
Between the two.
I would say, yeah, we're surprisingly far along compared to where we normally are and like how long it took from first album to second album. But that was also a conscious thing. We knew we couldn't take another 4 years, and we also didn't want to take another 4 years. So I wouldn't say there's any songs that are finished, but there's 4 or 5 properly fleshed out ideas where we're getting into the nitpicking now. And then so I think it's once we've got a couple of those nailed down. I mean, Brady will know better than me because he deals with that side of it a little more, but I believe we've already sent some demos to the label just to give them a vague heads up of where we are. But I think we're getting into the territory now of, once we're feeling really solid with a couple of these, we'll then start looking at producers and studio time and whatnot. So in our heads, we have a rough timeline of when we want to get it recorded and what that would hopefully mean for release dates. But it's one of those things where it's probably not worth fully locking in yet until we're a little further along with the music.
So not next week. No pressure.
If we wrap this up, then maybe next week. Yeah.
I'd like to have an album out next year. So
yeah. At current pace, next year seems more than reasonable and is the plan, but it's one of those things. There's no point telling people that 100% yet, just in case there could be another pandemic. Who fucking knows?
I locked in the week with Joe Studio for July.
That's great. Good to know.
So, we have a week for us to get in a room and actually play all the new material and like work on it together with instruments, because we've had writing sessions where we've been demoing and working on ideas, and some of us have got together in different groups, but that's going to be the week of we are just here to rehearse a little bit, but really just get all these new songs in the room and see how they feel. And then it'll be like, oh, actually that third note in bar 17 actually should be a 3 and not a 2, and all that like bullshit nitpicky stuff that takes so long for us. The best is when Dan and Jan used to get into heated arguments over like 2 BPM in a tempo, and I'm like, that's functionally the same, boss.
It happens. It's all part of being a band. But once you have it out and it's done, there's nothing like it. But boys, thanks again for hanging out on the show. It's been really cool.
It's been great.
Thank you very much for having us. I've had a lovely time.
Yeah, it's been unreal. And I'll have all the links in the show notes down below and on the website, which isn't on my roof, but it's somewhere. Take care. We're going to see you very soon, and go kick some ass.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thanks, dudes. Have a good one.